I went to Christian schools. I was supposed to be this way, and my parents didn't accept anything less. But now that I'm an adult and can think for myself, I feel like I was brainwashed, like you said, and I don't really believe in anything, and
Right.
I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know.
Okay. All right. I'm going to take a shot at answering you, and then Stuart, you'll take a shot, okay? All right, ma'am. The simple fact that you're standing here saying, this is what I was taught when I was a child, I don't believe it any longer, shows you're not brainwashed. You've got a free will, you've got a very fine mind, and you're questioning. I like the fact that you're questioning. He had to question. He couldn't believe Jesus was the truth because I believed he was the truth. Couldn't do that. As much as he loved me and as much as I love him, he would not be intellectually honest if he believed in Jesus simply because I do. So you're not brainwashed because you're questioning. Bravo. Don't stop questioning, okay? Now, second point is, questioning is good unless you get locked into just questioning. Because like it or not, ma'am, you do believe something today. I don't know what it is. Maybe you're even vague on it, but you wouldn't be dressed as beautifully as you are, and you wouldn't be as articulate as you are if you didn't have some trust in reason, in yourself. And for a lot of us, that's exactly where we end up. We put our faith ultimately in ourselves. I'm standing here saying, you're a beautiful, wonderful person, but you're a broken person the same way I am. Jesus Christ is more reliable than you and me put together. Why? Not because I believe that. Because the historical evidence of the way he lived, the way he treated people, consistently kind, consistent integrity, consistent honesty, the way he lived points to him being reliable. Secondly, what he taught. Sermon on the Mount. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemies. But I tell you to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about what you will wear. Is not life more important than food and clothing? Yeah, it sure is. You see, when you read his teachings, they're not stupid, they're not irrational, they're not hocus pocus. No, they have the ring of truth. Well, that's important. I'm not going to follow a madman. I'm not going to follow somebody who makes no sense. That'd be stupid of me. It'd be stupid of you. Third point, when you watch him die on a cross, man, he's on a cross praying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I can promise you, if I'd have been on that cross, I would not have been saying that. I'd have been cursing those suckers for nailing me to a cross. So he not only taught this incredibly high ethical standard, but he lived up to it. Wow. That demands respect. But fourthly, and most importantly, 3 days after he dies, he rises from the dead. Oh, Cliff, that's a cute fantasy. That's a religious myth. No, 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 no. Over a period of 40 days, he appears risen from the dead to over 500 people, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15. Now, why does Paul write that? Because he's saying, guys, don't take it from me that Jesus rose from the dead. There are over 500 people who saw him risen from the dead. Now, he goes on and says, some of them have died, but most are still alive. So go out and ask them. In other words, don't take it from me. Don't take it as the gospel truth just because I, Paul, say it. Instead, go out and investigate for yourself. Talk to these eyewitnesses. You see, ma'am, the historical evidence is Jesus died, was buried in a tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, not some secret little tomb out there and someone ferreted his body away. Joseph of Arimathea was a ruler in the first century Jewish society. So everybody knew who Joseph of Arimathea was. He was not some covert CIA guy. No, he's a ruler. He's a politician. He's well known. Well, Christ was buried in his tomb. 3 days later, he's risen from the dead, and all of his disciples say, bravo. No. Thomas says to the other eyewitnesses, you say he's risen from the dead? You're an idiot. Not unless I can see him with my own eyes, not unless I can take my hands and put them in the nail prints in his hands, will I believe. And one night all the disciples are there, including Thomas. And suddenly Jesus stands among them, and he walks right up to Thomas and says, my man, right here. Take your hands, put them in the nail prints in my hands, take your hand, thrust it in the spear in my side, and stop doubting and believe. And Thomas hits the ground and says, my Lord and my God. Now, where did Thomas die? And why did Thomas die? Thomas probably died in South India. Why? He's there as a missionary. He's there telling people in South India about Christ. And some people get really offended and they kill him. If he didn't see Jesus rise from the dead, you think he would have gone to South India and tell people that Jesus was the truth? No. He was a Christ doubter. He was a skeptic. But when he saw the dead Christ risen from the dead, that radically changed his life. You see, people will die for a lie, but they won't believe it's a lie. They'll believe it's the truth. And what you got with Thomas is, you got a guy who says, I saw Jesus risen from the dead, and before I saw him, I did not believe. But I saw Jesus risen from the dead, and if you want to kill me for it, go ahead. And he died a martyr's death. People will not die for what they know to be a lie. To study psychology, study Watergate. Dean, Ehrlichman, and Haldeman, 3 brilliant United States lawyers, were not willing to cover up the Watergate lie in order to escape prison. They all broke and said, you're right, there was a scandal, Watergate occurred. How much more unlikely it is for a bunch of first century Jewish peasants to be willing to die to cover up what they knew to be a lie, that the dead Christ had not risen from the dead. They knew that, but they made up this lie that he'd risen from the dead, and we're going to die for what we know to be a lie. No, ma'am, people don't do that. So that is why, ma'am, he's not brainwashed, I'm not brainwashed. He had a dad, obviously, who believed in Christ. I had a dad who believed in Christ. But we don't believe in Christ because dad believed in Christ or mom believed in Christ. We believe in Christ because the historical evidence is he is reliable. And that is why, ma'am, faith in Christ is not, I believe, I believe, I believe. I believe, I believe, I believe. No. Faith in Christ is, this is how he lived, this is how he died, this is how he taught, and this is how he rose from the dead. Based on that evidence, it is wise to trust him.